When we talk about internal data that we're going to be looking at, this is what we call secondary data. And so a lot of times the information we're collecting for research, we're going to say it's either secondary or primary. And so it's easy to figure out the difference between the two. Secondary information already exists. It may not exist for your specific problem that you're researching, but it's at least congruent or relevant to your topic. And so then primary data is data that hasn't existed yet. And so we have created a survey to collect that information. And so this section, we're going to be talking specifically about secondary data. And so when we're using secondary data, there's some advantages of using it. A lot of times you're going to use both secondary and primary information to complete your study. Number one, using secondary information may help you better state the problem. By looking at maybe other research that was done, you can see some of the pitfalls that those researchers ran into, and so you can kind of eliminate those pitfalls by evaluating what they've done. Along those same lines, it can allow you to frame your research. It provides comparative data. If your research information is completely off from the secondary data that you've collected, you need to identify why is that information different. And it's going to provide a cost savings for you. Collecting primary information is very expensive. So if you can purchase or come across information that already exists and can meet that need, that can save you valuable resources. Some of the disadvantages: the research was collected to fit a specific problem, not the problem that you were looking for. So the data might not fit your specific needs. There's an accuracy issue to look at. Do we know how this information was collected? Do we know what policies and procedures were in place to verify the sample size? What was the sample size made out of? Those are the type of situations that you're going to want to look at. The units might not match up. And so maybe your study was males from the age of 18 to 25, then 26 to 32. Maybe a different study is saying 18 to 21, 22 to 25, 26 to 37. And so if those units don't match up, sometimes it's hard to identify what the information is truly saying in a comparative setting. And then the idea of how relevant is the information. If you're looking at a study that was done in 1996, is something that was done 15, 16, 17 years ago, is that relevant, and is that information still relevant to your problem today, or do you just say, I can't even look at that information because it doesn't mean anything to me because it's too outdated? Majority of companies will have internal data systems that will be part of a larger network, what we call the decision support system. And the decision support system is going to combine their databases with some modeling and potentially a dialogue system that is going to help manage and develop and access information. The one thing companies have now is no limit of the amount of information that they have. Your most basic point of sale software package will allow you to print up over 300 different reports. Now, the one thing that is interesting is how do you determine the information that you need and how it falls into those individual pieces. You've got to be able to find and data mine your information so you're finding the information you're looking for. And so when we look at database management, it's probably the most essential thing as a marketer that we need to understand. Any decision that we're making is going to be based off of information from our internal data sets. And so we need to make sure that we understand the fundamentals of database management. How do we collect, input the information, and mine it? And when we talk about data mining, that is how searchable is the information that we're looking for. And how do we input that information, and what are the outputs? The outputs of the information, can we export it to another program if we're going to be using it for something else? How well is that done? And we have to understand that inputting is the essential piece here. If we do not have quality way to input the data, that goes back to this garbage in, garbage out philosophy. If the information being put into the database isn't reliable, it's of no use to us at all. We have to understand that a lot of times our databases are our only connection, or our most relevant connection to our customer. And so we can track how long they're in our establishment, what they purchased from us. All of us have those loyalty cards. All of us have discount cards that we're using. That's all done to track customers. I can track what you purchase, when you purchase, how much you purchase, what your average purchase is, when do you normally come in, what do you normally purchase from us. And it's interesting, when I first started in sales, I worked for a big and tall store, and we didn't have a database management system. Basically, you had a black book where you wrote in what every customer purchased from you. And then you'd have to manually go back to the book, okay, who bought dress shirts from me? It literally would take me hours getting ready to prep for a sale and say, okay, let me contact these people, put the shirts aside for them, and say, hey, our shirts are going on sale, put your size aside for you. Now what do I have to do? I go to the computer and say, okay, send this coupon to everyone who's bought a dress shirt from me in the last year. I don't even have to touch it anymore. And so the database has really made the marketer's job much more effective if the information is being put in there properly. And so it's an important connection we have with our customer. We have challenges that we don't want to fight this information overload, that we know what information we're looking for and why it's important to us. And databases are going to tell us three very important things: who our customers are, what they purchase, and when do they purchase from us. And so those are three very important pieces of information that we can get from our secondary sources that we don't have to waste our time getting with primary research. And so another way that we can get secondary data is by purchasing it. And so there's different what we call standardized marketing information services out there. And what these companies are doing is they're collecting research for the sole purpose of reselling it. And so a lot of these companies will work in specific industries. And so you might see a study done on the restaurant industry. Well, what you're able to do is you're able to get that specific information. Now, some of the downfall might be it may not be 100% relevant to your specific need. And so you have to pick and choose what information you're using and then determining how relevant or how important the information might be to you. But again, it's a less expensive way to gain this information. Types of data that you can get from these sources: they can profile customers, they can identify trends in the industry, they will measure product sales and market share, and they also do measure advertising exposure and advertising effectiveness.